Hello, it's Dan from The Plague here again. We're going to be doing another episode of Hidden Gems, and I'm joined as usual by Nels.
Hello.
And this is the show where we take a look at a couple of albums from the history of hard rock heavy metal that we feel have been kind of overlooked over the years and try to give them a little more attention. So hopefully maybe you'll find some new music to check out and grow to love the way we have.
Yes.
I think I'll kick it off if that's cool.
Absolutely.
So my album choice for this episode is the band SWORDMASTER with their debut album, Postmortem Tales. And I used to have this on CD back when it came out. In fact, I had all their stuff on CD. And when I went to get my prop for this video, I was looking for it, couldn't find it. Looked on my Discogs, realized I'd bought the vinyl of it 3 years ago. Totally forgot about that. And apparently sold the CD too.
Oh, man.
So I'm officially getting old.
Well, good news. I think the CD is actually pretty easy to come by and the vinyl is not.
That's good. It is a limited, what is it? Out of 1,000. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
But anyway, so this band is from Sweden and they came along in the mid 90s. I think they formed in 93 or 94. And this was, the time when everyone was doing black metal or death metal or, the Pantera sound, basically, or grunge,
Right.
Thrash metal. What's that?
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget, I know. So thrash metal had really kind of just gone away. Like a lot of the thrash bands were doing different stuff or had broken up. And it was really refreshing to hear this because although there is definitely some black metal, maybe a little bit of death metal influence on it, it is, I think, far heavier on the thrash metal side. You can really hear the Creator Sodom sort of influences throughout the whole album.
Yeah.
And it's a really solid album too. I mean, it's only 9 songs, but it's all just very fast, very, well played, well structured songs. That's something else I always give them credit for is, they sound kind of samey from one song to the next, but it's still like they're very well put together. And even the lyrics, when I started diving into the lyrics, like they're actually fairly clever. Like they're not just, throwaway satanic whatever bullshit, but which is fine too,
Yes.
It has its place.
Not just that, but also clever.
The production on this is kind of interesting. It's got a very kind of it feels kind of compressed, kind of mid-temp or mid-rangey.
Tempo-y.
Which it works for the type of music it is. It's Andy LaRock produced it, and
oh really?
Yeah.
That's
and I
cool.
think that's kind of indicative of his style, at least back then.
Interesting.
What else was I going to say about these guys? So the two main guys who were in the band the whole time from start to end, they broke up in 2000. Well, he broke up. We'll get to that in a minute.
Right.
The guitarist and the singer, who go by the names of Nightmare and Whiplash. Excellent names. The rest of the band is Thunderbolt on bass, Terror on drums, and Beast Electric on the other guitar. So
they had such creative parents.
Yes. Although Beast Electric apparently joined after this album, now that I'm looking at the dates on here. But anyways. Yeah, so I don't even remember how I discovered this band because this was like the late 90s. The internet wasn't really, too much of a thing. There might have been a couple of webzines out there that maybe I read about them on, or
interesting.
There was still like Metal Maniacs magazine that did some more like extreme stuff. So, but yeah, it's just one of those things I think I probably just ordered based on a couple of reviews or mentions and was like pleasantly surprised how it came out.
Remember when you used to take a chance on music? And it seemed like so expensive at the time too.
I know. So yeah, some of the songs, I mean, there were a few that really stood out to me. The opening track is in Death's Trees / The Master's Possession. It's like a little intro and it goes into the Master's Possession. And this is just like one of those great intro songs. It like has like a nice build up, and then it goes through several change ups before it kind of kicks into the main riff. And I was always like that. The song Past Redemption to me is like the highlight of the album. It's just something about that chorus and that riff, the way it goes, it progresses from the verse to the pre-chorus to the chorus. It's just like this perfect just build up and resolution. And yeah, it's one of those ones that just comes in my mind all the time. And it's also the song that's got that part in the middle where they go into a couple of like really fast, like with blast beat drums, but then it like suddenly goes into this like, you know, like harmony guitar thing. It's like it sounds like it's a classical piece, but I'm not sure what it is.
They do at that point and at other points. It almost reminds me of Metallica, early Metallica era harmony guitar stuff.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah.
And then the very last song on the album, Black Ace, is probably the fastest song on there without even resorting to the blast beat. It's just a really fast riff, and the drumming throughout is mostly like the, you know, the classic thrash bass drum, you know, polka beat. We all love.
Yes.
But the other thing I wanted to mention is that, and this leads into where the band went after they broke up. There's a few songs. The vocals are probably the most like black metal element. Like they're pretty harsh.
Yeah. And
there's a few times where they actually use like some distortion on the vocals.
Interesting.
Which kind of gives it a little bit of that industrial edge. And in 2000, they just completely like they quit this band, and they like the same members like formed the band Death Stars. Yeah. Who took on this very like kind of weird gothic military.
It's like Marilyn Manson meets early Motley Crue. It's very visually,
yeah,
not musically.
I mean, musically, I mean, it's very heavy industrial metal, like maybe like Rammstein meets Silent Life.
That's a good comparison, I think.
But that's obviously they incorporated a lot more electronics and distortion and just all those kind of industrial elements at that point.
Very industrial.
It's just kind of cool that they actually were able to like completely reinvent themselves and have apparently become more successful as Death Stars than they were as Swordmaster. So
yeah, though I don't think Death Stars has put out an album since like 2017 or something, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, and so the interesting thing there is I was not aware of Swordmaster back in the day. I never discovered them. I was a big fan of Death Stars. And so when you brought this one up, I started, looking into it. And two things struck me as very funny. One was before I listened to the album, I read some other reviews that people had done of them. And they were pretty much split between, oh my God, this is awesome, thrash, death, whatever. And oh my God, what did they do since their last EP, which was so brilliant, and they messed up so bad on this album. So I went back and listened to that EP, and I just cannot agree with those people very much. So it seems like they were kind of in this constant state of not as radical, but reinvention over the years. But yeah, I really like what they did in this album. I really like the whole bringing thrash, very, very thrash elements in with, very black metal, especially the vocals, like you said. I thought it was super successful. And so I was really pleased to discover this album just last week, instead of, it would have been nice to discover it back in the day, but I wasn't aware of them. And then I was not aware of the Death Stars crossover and was very surprised when I saw that.
Yeah. And then after this album, they did an EP and another album as Swordmaster that are both pretty strong too. And in fact, I think the production might be a little bit better on those, but they're just not quite as, intense and fast as this one is.
Okay.
But
this album's pretty intense.
It is.
I mean, it's always tough to judge things by modern standards when people have gone just like crazy fast to the extreme. But still, even now, in the context then, it was very fast. And even now, it still comes across as very, very much thrash, fast metal.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the first EP, The Wraths of Time, because I
Yeah,
remember at the time I got this and I loved it, and they hadn't released anything new yet, so I went back and I bought that one, and
yeah.
I was in the same boat as you. I was kind of disappointed. It was definitely more just black metal, and just not very. I don't know. Didn't seem very professional.
It could definitely have been let down quite a bit by the production, which
Yeah,
honestly I think is somewhat of a hallmark of black metal,
that's true.
oftentimes
Yeah.
on purpose, or as a badge of something. I don't know. But yeah, I definitely didn't think it stood up to this album.
Um, and this album came out on Osmos Records, which out of France, which had a lot of the classic, black metal bands, Immortal,
Okay.
and I can't think of any others, but there's a bunch.
Yeah, there's a bunch.
But they also, when this album came out, there was actually several other kind of retro thrash sort of bands that they released around the same time. So I remember Bewitched. Bewitched were another great one. I don't know if you've ever heard them at all. What are the other ones I'm trying to think of? Oh, Inferno and Gehenna. And those bands, even including Bewitched, they were good, but they didn't take it very seriously. It didn't seem like they were always be pictured, like covered in beer cans or just the whole Venom sort of thing. And I don't know, Swordmaster always seemed to be a little bit more serious about it, a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah, it's interesting how that like you said, thrash kind of I don't know, it petered, it like the Bay Area stuff seemed like it had run its course, and then all of a sudden this sort of resurgence came in, started, and now of course it's like incredibly vibrant scene and just amazing number of old bands, new bands, and everything else. But for a while there was a drought, and it's like when you hear someone doing that again and throwing back to that and mixing it with new stuff, it's like so refreshing. At least it was to me. I was always a big fan of, and still am a big fan of thrash. And so it was really encouraging to see like this resurgence starting, I guess, around that time when this album came out.
Right. One more thing I wanted to share is, I just noticed this when I was looking at my vinyl, it came with this little flyer.
Nice.
Which I will read. It starts, yeah, you will may be the winner. 5 numbers out of this limited edition hand numbered are kept secretly at Osmos Productions. By the return of this coupon or no photocopy and the number of your record, you will get the complete Osmos mail order, and one of you can also receive a complete package with presents, CD, LP, t-shirts, posters for free. This offer is strictly available for hand-numbered issue on CD and LP, and only with the return of this coupon.
Nice.
So I apparently missed the boat on that one, but maybe I should send it in.
Maybe. It sounds like whoever wrote that went on to many good emails later from Nigerian princes.
Yeah. Well, it's a French label, and my French is much worse than their English, so I will not give them a hard time.
Yes, indeed. I'm sure it was also just meant as the, in the spirit of promotion. And it's a pretty awesome giveaway, actually, the sound of it.
No kidding. So, that's it for Swordmaster, and I will hand it over to you.
All right. And for this one, I'm going to do one that I've thought about doing for quite some time now. And it is the second and I believe final album by Phantom Blue, Built to Perform. And this is a really interesting band. They're a band that I think, obviously I had their album before this that was on Shrapnel, and I really liked it. But over the years, I tend to forget about them, and I tend to think in my mind that they're a lot softer metal than they actually really are. Like every time I go back and listen to them, I'm like, oh yeah, these guys actually really rocked. These girls actually really rocked. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why I have that kind of mental image. Maybe it's because of, a lot of the all female metal bands that came out. Well, certainly in the late '80s. I'm thinking Vixen and bands like that. Mm-hmm. They were fine musicians, but very gimmicky, not very metal, not very raw. And I think Phantom Blue, especially on like their first album cover, their image was very much glammy, way more than their actual music was. And the production on that first album too was pretty smooth and not very gritty at all. Definitely a product of its time. And this album departs from that. So on this album, they signed to Geffen. And I'm not really sure what happened, but I didn't buy this album back in the day. It wasn't like until much, much later that I went ahead and picked it up. And I kind of was wondering if it actually, like, I think they went through all kinds of management tribulations and other stuff right around that time. And something, I don't know the full story. I certainly, I'm sure there's a lot more research that can be done about this, but like this album, if you go look it up on, say, eBay, for instance, about at least 50%, if not more, of the copies you'll find are cutouts and are marked, promotional. I wonder what, I just kind of wonder what happened there. Like, why is there such a predominance of promotional copies of this? Like, did they really get screwed? And I don't know. Anyway, weird stuff happened with them. So, yeah, this was their transition to Geffen. They, it's mixed by Max Norman, so the production on this is actually quite good. There are guest solos on here by Marty Friedman, John Norum, and the playing on here is just throughout. It's really, really good. They're what I would call, they're definitely metal. They're up tempo, kind of aggressive rock metal. They're definitely not thrash or anything like that. But very strong, powerful, gritty metal almost throughout. I mean, there's a couple songs where they do kind of ballady stuff and do it pretty well, but the rest of it is just like really clean, aggressive, gritty, hard rock, heavy metal. Excellent guitar playing. I mean, the guitarist, they went through some lineup changes. Like, I think this album is credited with their original guitar player, Gigi Hangak. No, I'm sorry, that's the lead vocalist. Nicole Couch was their original guitarist with Michelle Meldrum. They were the two guitar players. And right before they recorded this album, I think Nicole left the band. Michelle ended up recording all the guitars on here with the exception of some of the solos. And then they got a new second guitar player in to tour with. And the new second guitar player was Karen Kreutzer, who only recorded a couple of the solos on here, from what I understand. So I think there was some turmoil going on within the band. Right after this album came out, they ended up getting sued by their manager, which is never a good sign. Got new management. And then it seems like things fell apart after this. Like this, I believe, is their last studio album, certainly the last album on Geffen. And then sadly, there's Michelle Meldrum, their main guitar player. She went on to have quite a career and play with a lot of other bands, but she sadly had some really serious medical issues. She died in 2008. She went on to marry John Norum after this album. And had a couple kids with him, I guess. So that's pretty awesome. But yeah, sadly, she passed away. And the band eventually reformed for one show in 2009, where they did a Michelle Meldrum memorial concert.
Cool.
So yeah, it's kind of every time I think of Phantom Blue, you think of sort of the sad stuff that happened afterwards. And like I said, it just seems like there was a lot of turmoil right around the time this album came out, and it's really sad too, because I mean, they're a very strong hard rock heavy metal band, like awesome players. Their drummer went on to be in the Iron Maidens,
Cool.
all-female Iron Maiden cover band, and also a band called the Little Dolls, which is a all-female Ozzy Osbourne cover band. And I think a lot of them actually had careers doing all kinds of cool things, music related, after this. But yeah, they just seem like a band that was right on the cusp of making it. And it feels like this album, again, produced by Max Norman, and it was a really good album, and it felt like this should have like broken them somehow, into being more popular, and instead it was kind of the end of Phantom Blue, sadly. So
Yeah, Geffen is weird. Like it seemed like they took chances on a lot of bands, but they didn't really put in the effort to like break them, or they just gave up on them too quickly. Because like EZO, I feel like was the same way.
oh yeah,
They were a great
yeah.
band. They did 2 great albums and just never got the push that they needed.
Yeah, and that's why, that, and then the fact that there's so many promo copies of this album out there. I just feel like weird stuff happened there. But yeah, sadly a band that didn't go on after this. But yeah, this is a really good album. It's it's definitely hard rock, gritty, heavy metal. A lot of it is very up tempo, aggressive sounding. It's really, really good. It sounds good even in a modern context.
Yeah,
I wish there was more.
production is definitely holds up, I think, better than the first album.
Yeah,
Although I really like the first album too.
I do as well. It
I
sounds 80s to me when I listen to that. Well, and it's also Shrapnel, so
yeah.
it has that sort of that sound. Yeah, I guess there's some kind of Paul Gilbert / Racer X crossover here. Like, I almost want to say that either Kim or Michelle was like a Paul Gilbert student or something like that, and that brought them to the attention of Mike Varney, and then thus the whole Shrapnel thing.
Right.
So I always think, when you're a band that has something that could be considered a gimmick, like being an all-female band or something, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I think on the plus side, it might draw people in for the sort of novelty of it, especially in the early 90s, but it also might drive some people away. I always wonder how that worked out for them, because they're clearly a very serious band filled with serious musicians. That it wasn't just a gimmick or anything like that. But I always wonder if that has a positive or a negative effect on someone's career.
Yeah, like they might get more attention, but they're not taking it seriously, and they have to work twice as hard just to take it seriously.
Right, and I think they might get some of the wrong type of attention. I don't know. Who knows?
Seems like every band back in the 90s, 80s had just horrible management problems too.
Right.
Just a lot of people taking advantage of bands. And
yeah, I'm sure there's tons more information out on the internet than what I found about that and what really went on. But yeah, it can't be good when, I imagine finances are pretty important to you when you're a band that's trying to make it, and getting sued by your manager, who probably is pretty business savvy and has, lawyers and that sort of thing. That's got to be a terrifying experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember. Was there, I don't think I'm sure there were no videos for this album. Were there actual videos for the first one? I'm trying to think if there were. I almost think there had to be. I looked a little bit and I didn't find any except for some live videos.
I don't remember.
Like maybe Shrapnel wasn't really doing. Yeah, boy, that might have been right in that era when they didn't get that kind of exposure. I don't know.
I don't feel like Shrapnel did a lot of videos for any.
I can't think of actually any now that I say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing about this album, I don't remember if I don't think I ever owned either of their first or second albums. But I remember the band. I think it must have been because you had the first album.
I have the first album on vinyl, and I'm not sure. I was trying to think of how I picked that up. Maybe just because it was on Shrapnel. I bought a lot of Shrapnel stuff in those days. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't have a whole lot to comment beyond what you already said. There's a cool Thin Lizzy cover on here, Bad Reputation. I thought that was pretty fun, showing the roots a little bit.
Yeah, and it works really well too.
When I listened to it, and I'm not sure I've ever listened to this album, to be honest. I thought I had, but it all seemed pretty new when I sat down last week to listen to it. And it's like the first song, it was like, oh wow, this is like really classic heavy metal, like loudness, chastising and that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But then as the album goes on, it's like, okay, well, this song has kind of a grunge sort of riff on the chorus, and the parts that are just like real heavy, and then like you said, there's some ballads, and so it's a pretty diverse record.
And it definitely leans more towards the heavy side, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's definitely that grunge influence, and the cover is kind of a little bit grungy, kind of has a, I don't know, motors.
It doesn't look like a major label.
It doesn't. It's an interesting cover. It's not a great cover. It's not. It's really muted colors, and I think if this is your primary marketing, like you aren't getting video airplay, and apparently they sent a ton of them to radio stations because they're all cutouts.
Yeah.
But yeah, I almost think they could have a better cover might have been, I don't know, a better move. Something brighter, more exciting. I don't know.
Yeah.
They definitely have there's a picture of the band on the back, and it's in an industrial setting, and they look kind of grungy. Definitely not like all glammy or anything like that, which on their first album cover they were very glammy image wise.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know how much of that was them and how much of that was Mike Varney.
I don't know either, because that first album cover is really not good.
It's not good. It makes you think it's going to sound like the first Poison album to me when I see that. And
it looks very lightweight. The logo, the colors, the photo,
the liner notes are all like wrenches. It's very
nice.
Industrial, very grungy kind of.
Going with the car theme.
Yeah, going with the car theme.
Well, I think that kind of wraps it up. I don't have any other comments on that. But if anyone out there has heard either of these albums and wants to chime in, or again has any other albums that we haven't covered yet that we should check out, please leave us some comments, and
absolutely
like the video. Until next time, though, we'll try to do this again in a month, and I'm sure we'll find some more hidden gems to chat about.
You keep coming up with really good ones, Dan. Every time you come up with one, I'm like, oh, I haven't heard that. Or at least I haven't heard it in a long time. And I struggle with them sometimes. I think this was a good one, though.
That's a really good one. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, take care, everyone. And until next time, stay metal.